Welcome to Glow, the podcast that illuminates your path to personal transformation. I'm Jessie Moss, your guide, author, and intuitive healer, here to help you crack wide open and glow from the inside out. I'm so excited that you're here. You are not alone. Let's walk this path together. Welcome to episode 8 of the Glow podcast, and this will be the last one for season 1. In this episode, we're moving from our knowing into this beautiful place of wisdom. We are going to recap our journey so far through those energy centers and come into this place where we can feel gratitude and look at our challenges and the gifts that we get from those lessons from a place of resilience and strength. And if you've listened to the other episodes, maybe starting to feel into how you may feel a little more in your power and a little more free or clearer of those old stories that really like to keep us stuck and in the known. So if you've been following this whole journey, you will know that season 1, this has all been about the liberating current. So when we're working through our energy centers and we're starting from the base and we're moving all the way up to the top, this would be that point where we're connecting now to divinity, to source consciousness, to God, whatever you call that, whatever that is for you, whatever that means for you. It is a very open, limitless, unconditional space that we're entering today. So before we start, perhaps take a couple of nice deep breaths and just feel any kind of spaciousness outside of you, inside of you. The breath is always that beautiful anchor to remind us that we can bring space into the body, we can bring space into our belly, we can relax our muscles even just for that moment. We can take that pause. And so when we take that pause, we're giving ourselves that opportunity to always zoom out. And if anything throughout this whole season that you've learnt from me or you've felt from my resonance, is that truth is something that always leads me, that place of integrity. And that doesn't mean just in front of people, that means in my life, that means every single choice I make. There's always that curiosity to, is this in alignment for me? Is this serving me? And getting practice with pivoting, with not always having to see something through. That was a big learning for me, and I know a lot of people have this as well, where you are told to see something through to the end and finish something, at the cost of whatever that means. But sometimes if you feel that inner knowing and that thing is not supposed to be finished, maybe it is your lesson to not stay through to the end. Maybe it's your lesson to ask for help a little more. Maybe it's just, we're all at different stages of our journey, and that's what I hope that you felt that I've addressed through this season as well. So how do we take these gifts from challenges? How do we build resilience within ourselves? And how do we feel empowered when perhaps we're not in the right environment? And also, how do we take the gifts from our challenges? This is alchemy, when we're shifting our pain into liberation, when we're feeling heartache, when we're feeling grief, when we can't see the other side, we can't see that dark tunnel that we're in. There's no light just yet, and it's up to us to either light that up ourselves, or just to stay in those learnings, to hold faith. And so this energy that we're in today is not bypassy by any means. I have very much talked about embodiment. I've talked about integrating things and bringing them back down. But while we're in this energy, we do need to feel into expansion, growth, faith over fear, and taking those lessons in a way that we're not bypassing our emotions. We're not bypassing anything in a spiritual sense. Everything is exactly what it is. And when you're going through a hard time, I know it's hard to feel into that and to go, why is this happening to me? If everything is meant to be what it is, why is this so hard? Why is this so challenging? And this is a learning that I've personally been going through, just wondering why I've chosen the hard road and how to take the road of least resistance. It's been always on my mind since I've learnt about it, probably in my early 20s. And it's something that's always on my mind, and it doesn't matter, because if conditioning is in the way without me addressing why life has to feel like a struggle, why I can't have good things, perhaps it's to do with worthiness. There's lots of things that can come up around that. Until I address those things, I can't actually clear anything to be in that space. And so I could try and force my way into just picking the easy road, but with wounding there, it's always going to cycle me back. And so with grace and in this energy today, we look to these things and we start to see, okay, what have I been clearing as I've been listening to this whole season 1? What has been the most prominent thing for me that has stood out? And that may be what I'm working with for this next little bit of time. And the more you listen to the episodes, the more you'll get. It's exactly how I've designed my book Open. The more you read it, you can pick it up, you can read it from any chapter. There's always something that's going to speak to you, and perhaps in a different way. That's the feedback that I've heard as well, that people have read it multiple times and they get something different out of it each time. So it depends on where you are on your journey. And as well as we're coming into this energy of oneness, of everything being connected, we start to see past ourselves and acknowledge the soul aspect of ourself, the higher self, the self that we are working on becoming every day. We're always becoming, and I like to look at life from that lens of we're always becoming, almost like always a work in progress, but perfectly imperfect. The way that we are, we're just remembering our wholeness. And the more we work on parts of ourselves that we've kept hidden, that haven't been okay to come out of the shadows yet, when we work on those parts and really love them, we allow ourselves to remember that we're whole, that those parts of us are so worthy of being loved and chosen, and those parts of us have kept us safe and learnt behaviors to cope. And the more that we clear these coping mechanisms, the more we can be unconditional towards ourselves. And the more we can be unconditional towards ourselves, the more we can really give that unconditional nature to everything around us. So when I say going past our knowing and into wisdom, there's the mind and the body connection, which I've addressed in previous episodes. And when we have the logic and the feeling and we're connected to the mind and the body, we're able to access this place where we can feel source energy, where we can feel very expansive, and where we may get these drop-ins or insights or dreams. And this is the place of our wisdom. The more that we go from our knowing and into our wisdom, the more we invite change into our life, the more that we be. So it's not really about doing in this space today. It's about being, letting everything around you work for you rather than you trying to control it all. And I'm sure most people that listen to this will definitely resonate with when things are out of your control. A lot of the time as humans, we have these tendencies to organize more, plan more, write out things in our calendars, become a little more like regimented or harsh with ourselves, and keep pushing forward. And some of that is a response. Some of that is taking control of what you can control. But I always find that there's this element of, well, if I don't control it, I'm not safe. If I don't control everything around me, that I'm not safe in this world. It's not going to turn out how I need it to. And this aspect of divine timing, of source, of you being in this expanded nature, it doesn't include you controlling every aspect of your life. There's a big element of surrender here. There's a big element of letting go of how you know it to be, and to allow your wisdom to step in. And so the more we release the knowing, the more we bring trust in to ourselves, which I spoke about in episode 7 when I was talking about intuition and how trusting ourselves and getting to know that place within us to discern what is my wisdom, what is coming through, what is true for me. We need to build trust for that. And it's the same as building trust to when to know, when to surrender, when to pivot in life. And as I'm saying that, notice if you have the tendency to always surrender in a way that might be unhealthy. So I'm talking about the fawn response when everything gets really hard and you throw your hands up in the air and it's like, nope, I'll just make everyone happy. It's easier for me to not have what I want. Any of that, just I need to be likable. I'm not going to rock the boat here. Anything that is from that space is not a healthy surrender. So when we can zoom out of our challenges, and this is where curiosity becomes a very important healing tool. Curiosity allows you to question anything that's driving you from a place that is not your authentic nature, that is not from the soul aspect of yourself, that is not in alignment to what your truth really is. And this may come in the form, I'll give you an example. This may come in the form of guilt. So if you are doing everything from a place of guilt, this might include not being able to say no to people, always being used to being there for everyone else, not allowing yourself to be supported because you've always been told from a very young age that you've got it better than someone else, or maybe you became the caretaker of your parents from a young age. You know, this responsibility might have been dumped onto you, and the only way through that was to forget yourself, was to become hypervigilant to everyone else's needs around you. And then you have this sensation of guilt, which comes from, well, if I don't do all of this stuff, and if I'm being told from a young age that I'm lucky I have these things, and if, let's say, a caretaker is always putting guilt on you for not doing enough, even though you're doing all that you know to do in whatever age it is, if they're not in a place where they can really understand or hold you in that, then it really takes you past your capacity. It really brings you into a place of living in depletion and always giving to the point where you don't know where to stop. And eventually that will break down the body, and it will bring in all these areas of life where you're not allowed to stop. And that's a belief. It'll highlight any beliefs that you have on, I have to be there for everyone else. No one can do it how I can do it. I have to do this. I have to do this because it's my job. And at the end of the day, it's conditioning that may have been there for your whole lifetime. And it takes a lot to start to deconstruct that. It takes a lot to look at all the places in your life that stem from this, and the pain that it might cause you and the grief you might have to do to release that. But in knowing that my reaction to all of that, when I can't say no, when I can't set boundaries, when I feel that immense guilt and it makes me do something that I don't want to do, it makes me go past my capacity, curiosity can come in at that moment and just speak to that guilt and separate from it. And we can monitor and ask questions. What does this guilt need? Why is this guilt here? And can we let it know that the role that it played in driving you, guilt's got the steering wheel, it's driving your life. How do you take your power back from that? And it's through love. It's through understanding that it's there for a reason. It kept you safe. It did a great job. And it's time now to start to let go of that and peel its hands off the steering wheel and let it take a back seat and let it know that I'm going to be driving this life now. I'm going to be making these choices, and I'm going to make these choices from a place of knowing, but into my wisdom. I'm stepping into my wisdom. I know better now. And this is how you alchemize your challenges into gifts, and how you see how those parts of yourself at the end of the day usually just need to feel wanted, validated, acknowledged, loved. It starts to become very simple from a place of divinity, from a place of unconditional love, from a space of surrender. And sometimes we can't just let something go. And I have a huge aversion to anyone in the spiritual community that does say, we just let go now. This is it. You're going to let go of that, big thing, let go of guilt. And that could be terrifying for some people. That could be highly triggering for some people. And so it's just about every time you catch that guilt, just reminding it, hey, you don't need to do that anymore. I understand why you're doing it now. And I'm here for you. I love you. And I'm gonna drive. I'm gonna take this wheel of my life and I'm gonna steer it now. And it's just over time. This helps us to rewire the brain. And this is how we bring that expansive nature of our wisdom down in through our bodies and into our life. And so this is the piece that I find missing in a lot of the healing work, is that we spend so much time surrendering, letting go for the cycle just to pop back up again. And so it is important to bring that wisdom down and through the body and out into life through actions, through embodying that wisdom, through letting go of the guilt in little tiny actions. I remember when I was transmuting guilt, it was mum guilt, and I felt like I could never leave my kids. And I remember taking myself to the beach, and I started with 10 minutes because I would literally get to 10 minutes and want to go home, or I'd want them to be there with me, or I'd feel all these feelings of guilt, and it was too uncomfortable to have time on my own. Until eventually I worked on it, and then I went and studied yoga overseas for a month, and I was able to take myself away. And yes, I felt guilty. Yes, I missed them. It didn't change any of how I felt about the situation, but I was able to embody that I mattered too. My self-care mattered, and I was going through a very hard divorce. I went through court for 5 years. I was struggling with my CPTSD. I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I really needed to find myself. I didn't know myself after that abusive relationship had ended. I didn't know who I was anymore. And that month 3 weeks I think it was, that I took away was life-changing. I was not only a better mum for my kids, I was a better version of myself. I was able to understand that if I was to feel a little bit of that guilt and do what I knew that I needed to do, was me stepping into that point of wisdom where it's okay to give myself something. It's okay to learn that I'm worthy of this time, of this money, of this effort, of this learning. It is okay for me to receive. And like trust, like surrender, if we can't learn to receive, we can't actually bring this wisdom down through our bodies and into our life. And this is the important thing about knowing that we are all connected, knowing that we are all one. And the more healing that we do on ourselves, that healing ripples out into the world. And that's the only way that when I come to thinking about sometimes being devastated at the state of humanity, that it's the only way that I can see forward for myself, that it's a little bit of change that I can make. And it's part of the purpose that drives me. That's part of anytime something feels difficult or hard, these are the things that I remember, my why, so I can keep expanding out into that space and bringing back the wisdom. Let's move into navigating spiritual awakenings. So you might have heard of the dark night of the soul, just these sticky times that we move through when we're discovering more about ourselves, and perhaps we reach a point where everything feels like it's just completely fallen apart. And I've spoke about this in previous episodes, where it's important for that to happen. And the more experiences of that we have, the more we can navigate, we're just here again. So in episode 7, the last one, I broke down the stages of transition when you move through a change. And so if you've missed that one, this is something you want to develop more of an understanding about, go back and listen to that one as well. So when we come into that final stage of coming out of the other side of something difficult, we've got through a challenge, we have wisdom now. It is really important to utilize that wisdom. And we utilize that wisdom by bringing it through actions. And usually by that point, we can feel into having a sense of gratitude for traveling through that. It's through adversity when we get to the other side. If you've ever done something difficult, I know in my time in Peru, every time I'd get to the end of a journey, I would always feel this wave of just absolute gratitude for the experience. I would feel my heart, I would feel so connected to myself and to what I felt unconditional love truly meant. And when I'm in that space, everything is connected. And so when we come to this phase of that spiritual awakening, how to navigate that, there's always an option to go back and to forget that that happened and to go through another challenge again. But it's also a beautiful place to come to. If you've done it a couple of times, you will start to realize, oh, this is how that pattern is being transmuted. This is how I'm now going to bring that wisdom down in through my life and share it through my actions. I don't have to tell everyone of the journey that I just had. I just need to embody this so people can feel it. And it's through that felt sense and through that new resonance of your energetic field that people will definitely start to notice a shift, and that ripple effect, it travels out to people. A great example of resonance is I have so many people book appointments with me, come and see me and just say, I don't even know what it is that you do, but I knew I needed to see you. And that's because I hold what's true and what's important to me in my resonance. And so if I'm living by truth, integrity, if I'm empowering myself from no longer choosing abusive relationships, I've had all this life experience that now I get to shape and change from that place of wisdom, from knowing better. And the more that I hold that in my energetics, in my field, people just feel it. And so this is a completely different realm that we're talking about. This isn't the physical realm that we occupy. This is the realm where we get in touch with our true essence, with the soul aspect of ourself, and what the purpose of that soul is. Why did it come here? These are all questions that we start asking when we have these spiritual awakenings. So if we can have the awakening, come to the other side of it, start to realize what the lessons were. What have you been learning, and how many times has that shown up for you, perhaps without you even realizing it at this level, because this is just another layer. And to know that the nature of our evolution is very cyclic. We're always going to come into another cycle where there's a new beginning and there's a new end, and we're always becoming. And so this is that vast, expansive energy that I'm talking about and I'm speaking into. And when you feel perhaps on that other side of that awakening that you've had, that you get to alchemize, that heartbreak makes sense because you meet someone that is way more aligned to your value system, someone that makes you actually feel safe, someone that's being in integrity with themselves, someone that has done just as much work as you and can actually hold you. That is a blessing. Yes, it might have been hard to go through a breakup or to realize you've continued that pattern again and again and again. But the important thing is to stand on the other side of that in your wisdom and to see that it's been alchemized, so it's not chosen again, so that loop doesn't get to happen again. And this is how we clear this for the generations coming. This is the thing that draws me into personal growth and self-development and looking at my life from a place of being in this human body, but also from that aspect of soul. Am I in alignment to what I'm feeling that I'm truly meant to be here for? And that place will always call us deeply only when we've been through challenge. If everything's perfectly fine and we're oblivious and we're ignorance is bliss, if we're living in that space, we're not going to be taken out of our comfort zone. We're not going to be challenged. And so it's starting to see that the challenge is actually needed and that the challenge is actually part of it, and to not have aversion to the challenge, but learning to even have a little bit of excitement to it, even though it may be painful, even though it might be really hard, even though you might have to leave a relationship or a job or something that feels really secure and it feels really scary. It's going to feel unknown because you've not done it before. So all of these things really shape into coming out the other side of these awakenings or learnings or lessons and settling in to a place where you have gratitude for what's just happened and where you feel a sense of everything is in the right order. That was supposed to happen. I was supposed to see that. And usually people report this sense of synchronicities happening. And I always feel when everything's reflected back to me in that synchronistic way that I'm back on track. I'm noticing, I'm aware, I'm in my body, but I'm connected to source. I'm connected to spirit again. I'm connected to myself in a higher way. And I let that part of myself lead me. So even though I'm talking about this expansive nature where everything is possible, nothing is impossible in this space. We change our belief systems in this place. We reach out there to start manifesting things. We put our intentions into this space and it goes up and out, and we start to dream and create and visualize in that place. But the missing piece, especially for manifestation, is knowing how to pull that back in to this reality that we're in our bodies. And so learning to travel well is that important piece where we need to know that we are on this earth and we need to treat this earth with a lot more respect than what we are. We feel our feet on the earth, we feel our physical bodies, but we also know that we're expansive in nature and that we will return to that when it's our time to transition from this life and to go back to that place. Our time here is temporary, and I always like to remember that. I always like to remember to walk softly on this earth, to respect the earth, because this is our home. Anytime that someone has a wounding around not belonging, and I have, and this is how I know that the earth is always there when you feel lack of support, when you don't feel people there for you, when you feel really alone. The earth is always there. The earth is there with its nurturing energy, holding everyone, holding all of us. And we need to remember to come back and bring the wisdom down, and that also helps the earth to heal. And there's a lot of healing that needs to happen, especially just in recent times, seeing what's been going on. And even yesterday I had no water here at home, and just to even not be able to have a shower and feel clean, I was feeling into that. What if one day there's no water? And it was almost this thought of, right now maybe that's a possibility. Maybe that's where we're going, where water doesn't come out of the tap. You know, like that was me zooming out way beyond that moment, way beyond myself. And I just was sending so much gratitude for the earth, for water, for all of those things, because if we don't have that, we don't get to live in this physical body. So it's knowing how to travel well. That's my point of that. And knowing that when we have gratitude for something, we're helping it to grow. So if we can be grateful for the earth, grateful for our bodies, grateful for being able to travel up into that very vast, expansive nature of ourselves and to bring the wisdom back, we can be grateful for all of that. The more it's going to happen, the more connection that we have inward to ourselves. This is all the inner world that I'm talking about. So when you visualize, if you ever do, going up through your crown chakra and out into that space of divinity, of expansiveness, then understand that you may be traveling up and out there, but you're going into your inner world. This is inside of you. This is why I love the poet Rumi, and I love reading quotes and watching Ram Dass speak, because he comes from that place of unconditional love, of just a really expanded nature, but it's very embodied down into words, into actions, into the life that these people have lived. And in chapter 9 of my book, I've started this chapter. It's called Gratitude in Oneness. And I've started it with a Ram Dass quote. And it says, "Let's trade in all our judging for appreciating. Let's lay down our righteousness and just be together." And so when we talk about divine timing, everything is as it should be. Sometimes things might not feel like they're working out, but when we come from this place and we trust and we can let go of that grip of control a little bit, just to see what could happen. Maybe magic is happening. Maybe what is meant to happen is actually happening. And it doesn't mean at all that that's going to be an easy process, but it is a process and a skill that can be learnt, and we all have it inside of us. We all have intuition that we can access. We all have this power residing in all of us that we can tap into at any point in time, where we get to that door of that next challenge and we can stop for a moment and say, this really sucks. This is really painful. I really don't want to do this. But if I let go of expectations, if I let this journey just take me for a little while, if I just let go of that grip and take a breath and see what happens when I get out of the way, you may be surprised to what might unfold for you when the mind isn't so prominent. I know when the ego wants to kind of die off and you want to be rebirthed into more of yourself, it's very uncomfortable. The ego doesn't want to go anywhere. The ego's kept you safe. So we can get really caught up on this vision of how our life is supposed to be, that I wasn't supposed to be here. But in true fact, if you're looking at it from a soul perspective, from the space we're talking from today, the space of oneness, you're exactly where you're meant to be. There's nowhere else you're meant to be but here. Even if you're going through a really shitty challenge right now and life feels really hard, I believe there is something that you are learning that is going to, if you choose to, shape your life and bring wisdom down in through your body, so you can then resonate that and show other people that through resilience, through trust, through connection with yourself in a deeper way, that healing is possible. It's like when you're manifesting something, and I hear people say this all the time, where I've been manifesting this for this many years and it's still not come yet, and they have this specific vision of how it's going to come in and what steps it's going to come in. At first I'm going to find my partner, and then I'm going to get that house, and then I'm going to have my children in this perfect order. And sometimes it doesn't turn out that way. I've had moments where I've looked back on my life and just thought, wow, like I honestly thought it would be a little different to this. And it makes me giggle, because there's no way I would have chosen so much heartache, so much pain, so much suffering for myself. But I also know that those are the gifts, those are the times where I've very deeply healed, and I've let go of a bit of conditioning that I now don't need to pass on to my children, and that I bring awareness and love and more connection with them. And I think at the end of the day, for me, one of my values is family, and it is truth, and it is integrity. So anything in alignment with that is going to make my soul feel like it's purposeful. And in that purpose, I live in more grace. I give more grace to myself. I give more love to myself. And that encourages everyone around me to do that. So when we talk about a forgotten oneness, this is the connection and that oneness of self, because we are all connected in this space all the time. There's a lot going on. There's energy always moving. There's things that we can't see living in this realm. And the more we tap into that place, perhaps the more we see, the more we sense, the more we feel. And just a side note to that, being sensitive is a superpower. Being an empath in a world that has a lot of pain in it is brave. It is strong. And to feel your emotions and be in your heart is very courageous. There's nothing soft and fluffy about that. And just because other people maybe don't understand where you're at, it doesn't mean that you need to shrink anymore for this, and that can be a whole journey of itself. So I want to finish up this episode talking about commitment and devotion. Some people devote themselves to a religion, some people to a practice, to rituals. It's finding a commitment or a devotion that you can tap into that reminds you of your faith over fear, that reminds you of your expansive, true nature, that place where you can feel peace and the higher vibrations, as well as being in the body and feeling it all. When we come from that expanded space and we are remembering our oneness and we are committing to connect with that part of ourselves through whatever means feels right for you, then we're bringing in that aspect of zooming out where there's more clarity, where things actually aren't good or bad. We start to lose that polarity, duality of the human existence, where it is all just happening in the order it's happening in, no matter what it is. I always very deeply respect people that have been through hell in their human experience, and they can still come from a place of love. And I always respect people that come to that place, that zoom out of their struggle and they build that resilience to then giving something from a place of having no expectations, just knowing that part of themselves well enough to know that they can give that without it draining them. They can give that knowing why they're giving it. So their knowing becomes that wisdom, where once they could have just completely shut off to that and felt into victim mentality and gone into lack and created all this stuff for themselves. So I invite you to get curious into what you can devote yourself to, what you can commit to, that allows you to remember that vast, unlimited space that is in your inner world, that is beyond your body, that is beyond comprehension of our human existence, and to really bring that into your life and embody the wisdom of things that you've learnt. I feel like now, of all times, this is time to be doing this and to be leading the way from an unconditional space. So knowing that all journeys, any challenges, everything has a beginning and everything has an ending. And it's how we travel, how we cycle through that truly matters. So at the end of my book, I'm going to wrap up this episode with a few questions, because I love to bring in a little bit of integration here. So you can journal these down, you can just start to think about them. So this is a contemplation of your beautiful life. This is at the end of chapter 9. I will also add this book into the show notes, and I'll add a discount on my Energy Centers course, because I feel like if you're understanding this, if you're wanting to go deeper with this, it's an 8-week journey online where it'll open one energy center each week. So each week you're embodying that energy center, you're healing something that's in that space, and you're clearing yourself. And because we're moving up, the same as what we did with this season 1 for Glow, we're in this current of liberation. So when we come into season 2, maybe I'll do the current of manifestation, so we can talk more about how to bring stuff down and how to embody it. But I do really want feedback. So if you want to know about something specific, please make sure that you get that to me before I start into the next season. Okay, so contemplation of your beautiful life. What are you stepping into? Do you know what no longer serves you? Where could you be more curious within yourself? And what is your focus on? So we know what our attention is on, that's where our energy goes. If our attention is on gratitude, imagine the possibilities that you're creating through your life. If your awareness is on your lack and your struggle, then that's self-explanatory what comes from that. So Thank you so much for being on this journey with me through season 1 of the Glow podcast. I am so deeply grateful for all of you. I know people that will be drawn to listening to these are people that are healing something within themselves, within their life, and I have nothing but encouragement and gratitude and praise for you, and just respect, absolute respect of whatever journey you're on right now, and that you're willing to look at change. You're willing to build this resilience and strength and to empower yourself, which helps to change the way of the world. So if anything, I hope that this episode has connected you to and helped you to remember your expansive nature and that we're all connected. Check out the show notes for my 8-week course, and I'll put the link for my book Open in there as well. And as always, please remember that you have choice. You are whole already. You are not alone. And stay curious.